Hi, here is part 3 of my 3-part series of videos showing how I construct and paint a diorama of a scene from Lord of the Rings where Gandalf rides out to meet the Wraith. Part 1 shows the construction of the base. Part 2 shows me painting the figures of Gandalf and Shadowfax. The figures used are Citadel metal models made in the mid-80s, which I've had since they were new. I've repainted the Gandalf figure to show him correctly as Gandalf the White. This video will show how I put the whole thing together. And to start, I will paint the whole base with burnt sienna brown. I'm using artist's acrylic paints for this, as they are much cheaper than the model paints, but they are a little too rough in texture to be used on the models themselves, but are ideal for bases and scenery. The paint is watered down considerably to make sure that it gets into all the rough areas. Once this has dried, I mix a lot of black with a little of the brown and water it down even more to create a wash. I cover the tree with this. This will darken all of the shadow areas and will accentuate the bark effect. The areas that were not covered with the grit sand mix will have flock grass glued to them, and I use a different shade of brown to represent dirt. This will hardly be seen when the grass is added, but still needs to be done. I then dry brush a lighter shade of brown onto the tree to start to highlight the bark. Then I add some black to areas that need darker shading. Time to black wash the rest of the base. As I am working on the model, I swap from one area to another. While the base black wash is drying, I move back to the tree and start to dry brush a light grey to the bark to represent the great age of this tree and that it is beginning to fossilise. Now I'm using a dry brush dark green to show moss and lichen growing on the tree. I will use several shades of green for this. Now the black wash has dried, I am dry brushing the rocks with a light grey to highlight them. I'm using a soft brush and a very light touch for this. A little more detail with a smaller brush and an even lighter grey just on the very tops of the rocks. I have decided to add a little extra detail. I have some old skeleton models in my spares box, and I add one of these to the foot of the tree. I use a little superglue to stick the parts on. Now, time to add Gandalf Shadowfax figures, so I can work on the figure's base and include it with the main base. I superglue the figure into the area of the base that I had prepared when I was sculpting it. I'm now going to add the grass flock. A 50-50 mix of PVA glue and water. I paint this onto the areas I want to add the grass to. I also add a little glue to some of the grit sand areas, just to break things up a bit. Once the grass has been sprinkled on, I turn the model over and carefully tap the excess off onto a sheet of paper. There are some areas which still need a little more grass, so a bit more glue is needed. I am careful not to press down too hard on the grass flock, as this will flatten it into the glue, by carefully sprinkling it on to make sure that it stands up on end. Just brush a little flock off some of the areas that I don't want it. I want to add some longer clumps of grass to the model. You can use pre-made self-adhesive grass clumps, but I'm going to make my own using an old paintbrush. I cut the bristles off, colour them with a little green paint, and add them to the model with PVA glue. The Wraith model that I had already painted in the past is added to the diorama by drilling a small hole into the underside and supergluing it onto the wire in the tree that I had left for this purpose. And we are done. I hope that you enjoyed these videos and look out for further ones that I will be adding soon. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching.